Hey, well, welcome to today's guest expert session where I'm so grateful to share with you all the beautiful Tracy Seacombe. So Tracy is a self-worth coach and she's the founder and the creator of From People Pleaser to Soul Pleaser, which, as we will chat about as we go through today, was my first real sort of deep dive and exploration of I guess the real personal development and self-development work that I began, this whole journey with. So welcome, Tracy.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. So today's session isn't really like a set presentation, but rather Tracy and I thought we would go more conversation style where we can tap into Tracy's wisdom. But before we dive right into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the beautiful Tracy and why I'm so grateful to be able to share her with you. So I met Tracy quite a few years ago through a beautiful skincare business that we were both involved in. And Tracy, I know she's going to laugh when I say this, but she was a very big deal in this business, like a superstar of all superstars. And we had a red carpet event where Tracy had actually asked me to do her hair. And so, of course, I jumped at that opportunity because truthfully, it was almost like winning the lotto to have the opportunity to get some one-on-one time with her. Told you she'd laugh.
That's so cute.
And so I, as you will pick up, absolutely adore Tracy both personally and professionally. And I'm going to get her to share a little bit about her whole story with you now, because I think being more of a conversational style session, I guess I want to share that journey with you through both of our stories, because from this point, our relationship then took on a whole other level. So Tracy, would you like to sort of introduce yourself and share a bit of the background of your story?
I would love to. So I loved meeting Carla at that particular event that she's talking about as well. And before that, I had known her obviously through this business, but that was really my first face-to-face meeting with Carla. And you meet people through Zoom, but then you meet them in person, and Carla just has this beautiful energy. So it was just so lovely to be around her. Not to mention that she did an unbelievable job of my hair. So I looked fabulous that night, thanks to Carla. I kept telling everyone, look at my hair, look, Carla did it. So if I go back and we start there, when Carla and I met, I was absolutely loving that anti-aging skincare business. It's something that I'd taken on. I'd never done anything like that before. I'd been running a physiotherapy business since I was 27. So I ran that company for 22 years. And so I was used to being in a completely different space, in the healthcare arena. And it was a bit of fun. I was introduced to skincare that I absolutely loved. I got a great result with it. And it felt very natural for me to be able to share that with other people and really, really enjoyed it. And then fast forward to 2016, my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer 10 years before that. And she had been very successful going down the natural path of, juicing. She was vegetarian, walking all the time. She went through a natural Chinese medicine doctor and had done really well. But in 2015, the cancer spread, and in 2016, she passed away. And I think sometimes if your life gets really challenging, or you have an event like that that brings you to your knees, it is an opportunity to reassess your life and see where you're at. And for me, I think a lot of people in that anti-aging business were very surprised when I walked away from that, because I was doing so well in it. I just thought, the worst thing that I thought could ever happen has now happened. My beautiful mum is not here anymore. So what am I doing? What am I doing? What's important to me? What do I want to keep doing? And it made me reassess everything. And it also made me aware that I was really burnt out, had probably been burnt out for years and didn't even notice. But most importantly, I realized why I was burnt out. And that was because I put absolutely every single person, even complete strangers, before myself. And that's where from people pleaser to soul pleaser came.
And so when you started that business, I remember, like, I had obviously known of you through the skincare business, and you put a Facebook ad up talking about this whole from people pleaser to soul pleaser thing that was so new to everyone at that point in time. And I remember being at a point in my life where I was completely burnt out, completely exhausted. I hated the way that I looked and felt. I was just so in that moment that it was like this message from the universe that was a big tap on the shoulder, because when you started speaking about it, I was like, that's me. And I felt like we had gone on for so long with this mask of everything's fine. And, you know, I just kept adding all these different layers. And so to have those essentially super raw conversations was something that was very new to me, and took quite a bit to be able to take off that social mask and allow those conversations and whatnot to take place. So I knew from the moment you started speaking about this that I needed it, which is why I wanted to bring you in, because I think people pleasing, and we speak about this in our program, that people pleasing is such a big thing, and particularly at this time of year where we start to put everyone and everything else before the needs of ourselves, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you said that you saw that post and you felt like I was talking to you, that makes so much sense, because when somebody asked me, you know, why did you leave that particular business? That was when I suddenly thought, because I went from being a people pleaser and now a soul pleaser. But I knew that it was coming through me, and I knew that it was for other people than myself. And now when you say that, I think, no wonder I was the chosen one to do it, because from your point of view, looking at me, I had everything going on. Like, she's got the perfect life. She's so happy. She's so successful. But I thought the same thing of you. And so we were both, like, to the outside world, looked like everything was fabulous and quietly dying on the inside. So that is the people pleaser thing, you know, is quite often you will not know how unhappy someone is, or how much they're struggling, or how exhausted they are, because part of the people pleasing will keep them wearing the social mask and showing up and being everything to everyone, particularly the general public, you know, you as a hairdresser, me in that business and in my physio company and the other things I was doing. So this time of the year is really, really interesting. I see a lot of people burnt out by December. I see a lot of people torn, trying to keep extended family happy. So you've got your own children, your husband, you want to keep them happy for Christmas, but then you've got your siblings, perhaps your own parents still. Then you might have in-laws, and you might be trying to fit in friends and clients. And so you start to get stretched. And often it is because you're trying to make sure everybody else is okay, but also because you're trying to make it perfect. And so that combination, because that's another really big trait of the people pleaser, is quite often we're perfectionists as well. And so we're trying to do it all and we just can't. And that's why we start to get really exhausted.
And I love that, because it's, I mean, so completely true. And you know, I know that you say you used to work so tirelessly to keep everybody happy 100% of the time. And if you didn't pull that off, then you would beat yourself up about it. And I think for so many of us, the people pleaser in us feels the same way. And I know that that led me down that path of perfectionism, and trying to ease that was a very big deal, because perfectionism is such a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it really links in, which I'm sure you talk about in your program too, it really links into the conditional love that we've been trained to have for others and for ourselves. So first of all, not blaming our parents because they were conditioned as well, but we first of all feel that our parents love us if ... and they don't if ... Now, that's not true, of course, because they do love us all the time. But as children, we're really guided by them and how they're acting. And so if they're upset, then we feel like the love towards us has been withdrawn, even though that's not true. So then we start doing it to ourselves. So we love ourselves if we love our bodies. You know, we love ourselves if our house is perfectly clean. We love ourselves if we can throw a good dinner party. You know, if the outfit's perfect, if we say the right thing in a conversation, if we come across as interesting or intelligent or on top of current affairs. Like, the list is just enormous when we are so many different things to so many different people. And so the letting go of perfectionism is about a completely new belief. And now what I know is that why we're here is to discover who we are and be her. And we are unique. And what makes us unique is unique to us. And so therefore it can't be perfect, because we all have these different nuances and differences that make us who we are. And that is what actually draws our tribe to us. So the perfectionism comes from this blanket approach of wanting everyone to like us. Whereas if we realize that we're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, we're not for everyone because we're just not the same sort of soul signature, and then we really get to know us and we can live as her, that's how we're going to find our people, is just by being ourselves.
Absolutely. And once you can do that, incredible things start to happen. But I know as a part of that, you really help women find that peace of mind rather than overthinking all of these situations.
Yeah, overthinking was probably the most debilitating symptom I ended up with during the burnout. So I didn't wake up to my burnout until after Mum died, and it made me realise that people can be in burnout for a very long time without realising that they are. But when I think back about the pain that I wanted to stop the most, it was the voices in my head. I got to the point, because I'd been very, very goal-driven all my life, and it was always about setting a goal and reaching that goal and just pushing myself to always achieve. And that's where my conditions lie, is my self-worth was very much attached to achievement. And there's nothing wrong with being a high achiever, and there's nothing wrong with setting goals and achieving things. The problem is if your happiness depends on it, and you can't be happy until, because then you have a very unhappy journey getting to a short-lived bit of, oh, I made it, and then you're on to the next thing. And so it's just not enough happiness. Yeah. There's too much pushing in between. But, you know, when I think about what led to that, it was this overthinking, and that was literally doing my head in. And I would rehash conversations, wish I didn't say something, worry about whether I offended someone. Then I was projecting into the future, what if? And that craziness in my mind was the thing that was really unsettling and making me anxious. You know, I was burnt out and anxious. And a lot of people who come to me, I give them a questionnaire before they start the program, so I know exactly what they want to get out of it. Most of them want peace of mind. Most of them want to feel calmer, more relaxed, more at peace. And it's the best thing to want. You know, when you've pushed and pushed and pushed, and in the end you come to breaking point and you're like, all I want is to feel calmer. You don't even realize in that moment that you're asking for the best thing, because when you want to become calmer, and you do, you actually align with your true essence and start to attract with ease all the things that you've been pushing and pushing and pushing for, that will easily show up for you when you let go of that resistance, which is stopping them from showing up.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a huge thing. Like, I know for me, I at that stage couldn't articulate it and put it into the words that you were able to do. And so when you were speaking, I was like, Yes, and for everyone that's watching the replay, I often used to say to Tracy after our conversations, oh my God, you know me better than I know myself. And I think this happens because when our brains are so full and they're so constantly, scrambling those thoughts and thinking those beliefs and things like that, it's really hard to put one foot in front of the other and, get back onto that right, calm track if it's just too noisy in our head, isn't it?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And I think that's why there has been such an explosion of coaches, over the past 5 or 6 years, because I think that we're waking up one person at a time. And there is somebody who has been in your shoes and they're only a couple of steps in front of you. And when you are so far out of alignment, which just means generally feeling negative, you can't get that wisdom yourself. You can't tap in yet to that inspiration and get that clarity. But your soul will recognize it when you hear it. Whenever somebody says to me, I resonated with what you said, or what you said gave me goosebumps, I know that what I said was for them and it just happened to come through me. But what we're doing as coaches is we're helping people realign so that they can get that message direct, because we all have that ability. But sometimes we need to do the work to understand what's brought us down from the alignment, what's got us in the low vibration. Usually it starts with making some time for ourselves and making ourselves a priority so that we've got time to come up for air. And then gradually, when we start to become calmer, then we can tap in directly to that message ourselves. And I think that's really our role as coaches, is to guide people back to that alignment and that wisdom to be able to tap into that message directly.
I agree. And because exactly at that moment, the moment that got you into this was through one of those darkest moments. And then the moment that I found you was one of my darkest moments. And so I think it's reframing these moments in our life as not being bad and heavy and terrible experiences that we go through that we then have to continue holding on to, but rather experiences that we can use as these awakenings and these moments of going, okay, I love it when these things happen now, because we get to surrender and open up to the next thing. It's just that next level of messaging and next level of awareness that comes through. So you have often said that, with the people pleasing, and I know this is true throughout lots of our conversations, but there's that need for being needed, and how our self-worth can often be attached to that. So I want to chat about that for a minute, because I really felt like that flow on through increased self-worth, because when I got to Tracy, you would have all known this throughout the program when I speak about my experience, that I had very little self-worth, even though to the outside world I looked like I had it all together. But it was through that increased self-worth and the learning through you that really helped me step into a higher sense of self-confidence. And what I know now is that the definition of confidence is a combination of that feeling and that belief. And so when I first started all this work, I didn't have feelings of the self-worth and all of those things. And my belief system was very not in the right spot for feeling worthy and confident. So how do you see that flow through from self-worth? Because essentially that's the beginning, isn't it? Like we calm ourselves down, we become a priority, and then we have to step into that sense of like, we are worthy of our time and attention. And it's a beautiful thing to watch, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, the very first step, even somebody willing to stop and pause and watch, something that you've posted, let alone taking the next step and, booking in a call to see whether the program is a fit, is that calling towards them understanding that they deserve this. to even say yes to a program. I can see shifts in people very quickly because they have felt worthy enough to invest in themselves, both time and financially, which is a big step for people that have low self-worth. And when I reflect on self-worth, I knew that I had low self-esteem for very many years because really my anorexia started, or the eating disorder, I guess that part of it started when I was 15, when my friend told me at school that my ankles were getting fat, and I believed her. So it goes to show that I had a lack of self-worth, that I didn't just laugh at her and say, no, they're not. But that was the start of my awareness of my low self-esteem. And I read every book under the sun. And the shift really came for me with self-worth when I understood who I am. Because if you're trying to build self-worth based on you being a physical being, you're always going to find fault. You're always going to compare yourself to another physical being and go, I wish I was taller, I wish I was smarter, or I wish I had more money, or there's all these reasons why you're not going to feel good enough. And so step 4 in the Soul Pleaser program, Discover You, is my favorite, even though you're not ready for it until you do the first 3 steps. But to understand who we really are, to understand that we are an aspect of divinity. We're literally made in the image of God, and we can do and have anything we want, create anything we want. We are energy, we are vibration, and we are so unconditionally loved. When we really understand that to the core, then there's no expectations of yourself. And then you are free to just enjoy being yourself. I don't believe anymore that it is that we don't love ourselves. It's that we're not being our true self. And so we naturally don't love that about ourselves, because we can see ourselves acting out of fear, acting out of insecurity, being defensive, trying to get attention, trying to be loved, and kind of betraying ourselves by going along with a conversation we don't really agree with so that we can fit in. And, some of those things start in the family, but some of them start at school. There's all different stages where it starts. And it's never too late. It's never too late to start to really learn who you are and honor who you are. Own it. The quirky things that you love, own them. It's just so fun to be able to really love who you are.
Exactly. And, as a mom, I look at the quirky things that my children do, and it's those things that make me, my heart so full. And it's easy for us to identify them and to love them within children. But it's like, as we get older, we somehow feel like we're morphing into this sense of ideal on every aspect. But it's really important to know and be who you are within that process. Because I often say, talking about knowing who you are, that it's really hard to love yourself if you don't know who you are. And that was definitely one of the steps that I went through and that I speak about. And I know in one of your posts recently, you said that knowing, being, and loving who you are is everything. And not knowing, not being, and not loving who you are is soul destroying. And this is where I love your message and the connection of who we are as women from that soul level.
Yeah. I think that when we like, the very first time that you get laughed at, can be very, very young. It can be as young as 5, 4 or 5. And you go, oh, like, what? It's a bit of a jolt. And so then you hide that part of yourself. So if you think about how many times that can happen in a lifetime, and then women will come to me and they say that they're lost. And they've lost a piece of themselves through all these different stages of their life. And often it can happen after they have their first baby as well. So you're so excited through the pregnancy, you don't know what's coming. Nobody really tells you, because how can you? You just don't know what to expect. And then your life is all about that child. And obviously we love that on so many levels, but we lose a lot of ourselves through that process as well. And so I think that until you start to rebuild that, and also really own the fact that you change over time and that you go through seasons in life, and what was important to you 10 years ago is not important to you anymore. There's this saying, a man of his word, and it's like, because I said 10 years ago, this is what I believe in, I have to believe in that now. And I think it's the opposite. I think that we're evolving and changing and growing, and it's absolutely okay to say, I don't feel like that about that anymore. This is how I feel about it now. And I think if you can accept that about yourself and not be so rigid, there's all this opportunity to grow into yourself and continue to become. And I think the purpose of life is to be free. We've got complete freedom to think and feel and do, have, be, create what we want, joy and growth. And so that growth comes from, like you said, those experiences that might be really uncomfortable. I'm like you. When I wake up to it, at first you're in the middle of it and you're just feeling the discomfort. But as soon as I notice it, I'm like, great, this is another bounce point here where I can bounce from this and shed another layer, shed another limiting belief and move into who I'm here to be.
And that's so beautiful, because even as coaches, like I always say to my beautiful members, that I don't feel like we ever fully arrive. And the reason for that is we are constantly growing and evolving, and that's part of the beautiful process of life, isn't it? And I think being able to embrace those seasons, as you speak about, is a really important thing, because it's okay that not every season is full of rainbows and amazingness, because it's through those seasons that encourage our growth and encourage us to attract different people into our life, where we can get that next level of information from. So I really love that. Would you mind, being that our program is quite heavily body confidence based, would you mind sharing a bit about your body story? Because the girls all know my body story, but it's very much fitting with what you've said about losing ourselves and not being a priority and things like that. But your body story started quite young.
Yeah, so I really didn't think about my body until that day when my friend said, your ankles are getting fat. But it says a lot about my personality, what I did with that information, because I could have just ignored it or laughed it off. And I looked at my ankles, and in that moment, I thought they were fat. And that is when I began dieting. So I was 15 years of age. I'd always just eaten whatever I'd liked. I'd never had a weight problem in my life. And now all of a sudden I was obsessed with this. And so I was strictly dieting, but I couldn't handle it. So I would go between dieting and binging. So restricting and then eating too much. I was never bulimic purely because I couldn't. So then I had to restrict to make up for the binging. And then I went to America as an exchange student, and I was very homesick. And so I felt like there wasn't much I could control. And so when I was introduced to my host family, I told them that I was vegetarian, and we were in Texas. So their dinner plate was taken up by a big fat steak every night. So I got the side of vegetables, was about that much. So I just faded away basically in that year while I was over there, and was very underweight by the time I came home, and had developed body dysmorphia. So I couldn't see it because I'd been so hard on myself and such a perfectionist. I'd become obsessive. So I was obsessive about food. I was obsessive about standing on the scales and checking my weight every day. I would wake up every morning, make sure I hadn't eaten anything or drunk anything, made sure I was naked, had to be the lowest number possible, really obsessed. And it was mentally exhausting. I wasn't thin enough to be hospitalized, but I was thin enough for people to really notice. When I got off the plane back in Australia, the skirt that I was wearing, I ended up giving to my 5-year-old sister. So I was pretty underweight. But for years after that, before I found, what I call soul pleaser, I was still in my head about weight and food, even though to the outside world, people would say, I'm very lucky and have a great figure. So it was the mental anguish about it that was exhausting. and just not being able to relax and just be happy with who I am. And so tied up in the self-worth thing, the image around the body was so closely connected to not truly understanding that I'm more than this physical body. But once I have that energetic connection, my body is fluid because it's just energy, it's just cells. And so it just doesn't even matter, and it's much more about the emotions that I feel and my heart and my passion and, a conversation like this. And there's just so much more to life. And our body is just our vehicle. And once you let go of that, your body can just be what it is, which is unique to you. And I would just encourage all of you to just love it. And I wrote a program called Love the Body You're In a few years before I wrote Soul Pleaser, obviously as a result of my journey around that as well.
And one of the things that you and I spoke about, and it's so exactly flowing on from what you just said, was that in my body story, Soul Pleaser actually wasn't very body related at all, but that's where it flowed for me. And so one of the things that really made sense for me, and I speak about it in my program, and of course reference that I learned it from you, is the 3-part being. And so how we have that mind, body and soul. And I still remember the day that I listened to that session of yours, and I was walking up the beach, so I was having time for myself, but also it was probably the first time that I really understood that our body is just our vehicle, and that all of the forms of nourishment that we give it on all of those different levels contribute so much to who we are, and that we are so much more than a body. So how did you get to that point of incorporating the mind, body and soul aspect?
Well, I realised that my soul had been left out of the equation, that I was very much mind and body. So I was in my head all the time, always thinking. And when I started to become aware of my soul and my intuition and my emotions, I realised that I started to crack my heart open. Yeah. And, as I look at you at the moment and I think about your body journey, like I've never seen your body. Like I see your heart, like I feel your passion and your love and your warmth. And really that is the case, that people are connecting energetically. And so for us to give any attention to like what the physical body looks like is just not what other people are seeing, when we come back to that people pleasing, where we think that other people are critiquing, parts of us. But yeah, the real shift came for me when I started to notice emotions, allow myself to feel them, get out of my head, get into my heart. And, that's really where I spend a lot of my time. If I'm doing some financial stuff, I will switch that part of the brain back on, but I live in my heart and soul a lot now. And it's just a beautiful place to be, because everything else is just our creation. And so primarily, I think it's just reuniting with your soul, with your heart, with love, with the sensation, with the emotion of that. So vibration is the most important thing to me now, and everything else flows from that vibration.
Yeah. And so you speak a lot about joy. And I love that you speak so much about joy, because it's something that I think so many of us can do with more of in our life. Can we really ever have enough joy? So how do you, you basically live your life from your soul. How did you switch to ultimately living with soul and joy as the forefront of everything that you do?
Well, I recognised the truth, I guess. So I grew up going to church, and they, were teaching that you are sinners and you need to be forgiven. And so I had a lot of guilt. And so I was trying to be a good girl. And so I didn't deserve to be happy all the time because I wasn't always good and I wasn't always getting things right, you know, so that lines up with the perfectionist point of view and also the people pleasing. I was getting a lot of positive feedback, like I was always the teacher's pet and, you know, all of my clients really liked me, but that was because I was killing myself in the background so that they would.
Yeah.
And so joy was not on my list. My joy, everybody else's was, keeping other people happy was high on my priority, but I'd become street angel, house devil, because you've got to let off steam somewhere. So I was so busy being happy to the outside world that I was quite grumpy and irritable in the home, which is really where I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be that happy, fun mother, but I was too serious because I had too much to do and too much to think about. And so I think when you've experienced the absolute opposite of joy, then the goal for joy becomes much stronger. So that's why I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that experience of experiencing unhappiness. And then when you do have a taste of joy and you feel that inner happiness, not the happiness because something went well, just the happiness for no reason, just the happiness to be alive, that kind of joy. You realize it's been inside me all along. It has nothing to do with the conditions or circumstances of my life. I can tap into this whenever I feel like. And once I understood that, and once I learned how to do it, then there was no going back. So that's my new addiction. I do have an addictive personality. I'm lucky I don't drink or do drugs because I have an addictive personality. So now I'm addicted to joy, inner joy, which I think is probably one of the best things that you can be addicted to.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And when we are together in person, like the last time was at the Soul Pleaser retreat, you radiate joy in every aspect. You're a fabulous dancer too. So I think that
That's joyful dancing. That's dancing like no one's watching.
That's moving like you love yourself.
Exactly. Like you don't care. Exactly.
Which is just beautiful. And I think too, you know, two ways I want to take this conversation is, like, you speak a lot about the spiritual side and about coming back to God and to understanding all of that. And I really feel like that was one of the transitions for me as well, because I was quite a way away from that. And through doing that work, going from a people pleaser into a soul pleaser, and coming back to the truth of who we are, it did connect me a lot more spiritually, and I found God again and all of that sort of thing. So do you feel that that is often a flow-on effect for women, where they then feel like, because for me, I felt like it was really beautiful to be able to hand it over and not have to control everything on my own back and feel like everything had to come from me. So I just found so much peace knowing that I had a higher power that was there to back me, and that life was for me, not against me, all of these circumstances. So is that something that you find genuinely sort of happens through that transition for a lot of women?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, you know, when I'm first talking to someone who is about to join and I'm talking through the steps and I talk about surrender, I will say to them up front, as a people pleaser, this will be the thing that you will be scared of because you are used to gripping on with white knuckles to control everything. And that's the way you feel safe. And so we've lost that sense of safety and security. And instead, we've become doers. We've rolled up our sleeves and taken lots of action to make things happen because we don't trust life. And we don't trust that things will just fall into place. So we think we have to do it. And that's how we end up burnt out, by controlling everything, juggling everything, being pulled in lots of different directions on top of everything. We know the kids' schedule, our husband's schedule, our own schedule, our client's schedule. You know, we're just balancing so many balls and controlling so many things. So the idea of surrendering to me was so foreign. And that's why I call it my breakdown breakthrough when Mum passed away, is because I was brought to my knees and I surrendered and I cried out and used the word God and said, I don't know, my way is not working. I give up.
Yeah.
And I wasn't giving up on myself. I wasn't giving up on peace and happiness and a great life. I was giving up on how. And I surrendered that I didn't know how. My way wasn't working. I was kicking goals, but I was making very hard work of it. And, you know, potentially killing myself over it in terms of my health eventually if I'd kept going that way. And so I think that's where people get their faith back. They get their faith in life, that everything will be okay if you trust it and just let go of your tight grip on the specifics. Just have the general vision of, I am happy and healthy. My family are happy and healthy. We are wealthy and can do whatever we want. You know, everything is going to be okay. Those sort of statements. And you can fall into that level of trust. And it's just, oh, it's just a better way to live. It's just so much more relaxing.
It is, and it's, you know, it is a much better way to live, and it's so much more lovely from the inner sense of all of that. But it's also true that when we're stuck in that pushing and trying to control and do all of those things, versus when we've surrendered and we can open up to all of that, it's so true that we find more of what we're experiencing. So if we're stuck in that negative pathway and everything's hard and it's hate and all of that sort of stuff, we find more things to be, you know, stressed about and anxious about and things like that. Whereas when you do learn how to surrender and how to tap into that infinite wisdom, it is so much, it's like we change that energy and frequency and attract more of those beautiful good things into our life. So flowing on from there, you, with the whole energy frequency thing, I know you're an absolute guru with that as well. And you even spoke about on one of your posts, like helping women break free from financial worries and things like that and attracting more of abundance into their life. Can you speak on the Tracy behind
that? Yeah. So it's so interesting because I meet a lot of women and work with a lot of women who worry about money, and it's because of the security thing. So it's that basic need that they want to look after their family and feel safe and have a roof over their head. And in this day and age, that gets translated as money. And so people worry about money because it's a very base need to feel secure. And when you do some chakra work, you realize that the very root chakra is about security and feeling grounded and feeling safe. And so when you don't trust and you think that there is scarcity and you think that abundance is related to working hard, then you will always fear that you will run out. But when you understand that money is energy and that abundance is flowing to us continuously, all we have to do is stop blocking it, you realize that vibration is everything in terms of abundance. Abundance is a vibration. And to get onto the abundance vibration, you know, people quite often ask me what it feels like to be abundant so that they can get on that vibration. And what it feels like is it feels like relief, and it feels like being chilled and relaxed because you know you don't have to worry. It's the opposite to worry. And so the opposite to worry is trust. We're either worrying or we're trusting. And if you are always trusting there's plenty more where that came from, then there is plenty more where that came from. And abundance or money is like breath. You breathe it in and you breathe it out. You can't hold your breath or you die. You can't breathe it all out and not take another breath or you die. Yeah. So if you treat money like that, you will realize that you don't have to hoard it. You don't have to worry about where the next dollar is going to come from. Obviously, you need to practice this for a while before you do anything crazy like leave your job. But this just will happen as you go through these steps and you let go of this resistance. But abundance is available for everyone. Another one for people pleasers, because we're so altruistic and we care so much about other people, is there's a lot of guilt attached to abundance. And so it can be quite spiritual to not to have too much, so you don't want to have too much. Oh, I've got enough. And because we're here for growth, it's just going to be natural for your abundance to grow. Now, you can give a lot of it away. That's absolutely fine. But you're blocking it by thinking that in some way it's wrong or it's greedy to attract abundance to you. If you see people who are sick, you're not going to say, okay, I've had good health all my life, I'm going to get sick now to make those sick people feel better, and it's the same with money. The best thing we can do to help everyone is to be an example of abundance, and that's abundance in every area of our life: joy, relationships, health, wealth, doing what we love, our passion, and all of those things. And there is enough for everybody. I think people think there's a finite amount of the pie, and if you take too much, somebody else is going to miss out. So it's just understanding that there is an infinite supply. It won't run out.
Absolutely. And the reason that I wanted you to talk on money is because I knew that is how you would describe it. And it's so true for every aspect, like getting into that abundance mindset, and things aren't going to run out. Whether it is, whatever aspect of our life, we can incorporate it in that same way of thinking. And it was funny because a friend of mine went to a conference recently, and there was one piece of bread left on the bread basket. And a lady leant over, everyone had taken a full piece, and she leant over and cut it in half. And someone had asked her why she did that. And she said, well, because I wanted to make sure there was, some left for someone else. And the lady running the conference said, well, that's ridiculous, because if you just took the whole piece, I would have got the waiter to bring an entire basket over. And there would have been bread for everybody to have a whole second piece. And I think it's so true. We hold on to certain things thinking we can't let them run out, or we don't want to, overtake, or any of these things. But when we actually understand that law of attraction, we are so much more free to take that love, that joy, that knowing that all these things are there for our taking. So yeah, you are so beautiful. Thank you, Tracy.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Before you go, I would love you to share, I'm putting you on the spot, the whole thing's been on the spot. What are your top 3 soul-pleasing tips for us?
Number 1 is, when you go to sleep at night, lie on your back, put your palms facing up in receiving mode, and feel the energy in the palms of your hands so that you connect with source energy, your soul, as you drift off to sleep, so that you can sleep in alignment instead of continuing to worry about what happened that day or what you're going to do tomorrow while you're asleep. And then when you wake up, tap straight back into that again, so that you don't jump into checking your phone or going through your to-do list or rehashing something from the day before. It's my first tip. My second tip is that when you notice a negative emotion, ask yourself why you're feeling that, and ask yourself what you believe that would cause you to think that. And then flip it and turn it into an I am statement, and create an I am statement that you believe. So if you don't believe it, it won't work. So it needs to be something that is true for you. So if you don't believe you're worthy, I am worthy may not work. So you might be able to say, I am good at some things, or I am becoming better at this, or I am really open to believing that I am worthy. And then my third tip would be to know who you are, know that you are this incredible person, and that you can become anybody that you want to be, just 1 minute at a time. So just in the moment, think, who do I want to be right now? Do I want to be loving? Do I want to be kind? Do I want to be generous? Do I want to be funny? And just stop and be who you want to be in that moment.
Absolutely beautiful. Oh, you're so good. Now, I know that the women that watch this are going to be thinking, yes, we can see there's definitely a Tracy flavor through Think Feel You, because so much of what I learned I've obviously learned from you. So it's so beautiful to hear your take on things, because it's been a few years since I worked with you as well. So with growing and evolving, it's so lovely to come back and have a bit of a chat. Now, I will put all of your details in with the recording of this, but while we're live, can you please tell people how they can find you?
So probably the best place to go is the Soul Pleaser Facebook group. So that's free. You can go in there. I've got lots of freebies in there. Also my website, which is my name, tracyseacom.com.au. And if you're interested at all in the Soul Pleaser program, then you just reach out to me and we can have a chat.
Perfect. And you also run often some meditation programs as well, don't you?
Yes, so the next Calmness Code Challenge starts in February. So in the Soul Pleaser group, those dates will come out. But on my website, when you see the Calmness Code Challenge and click on it, the date's already there and you can already register for it now, even though it's a couple of months away from now.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time and your incredible wisdom.
My pleasure. Great to see you, Carla.
So beautiful to chat with you. Thank you.